Welcome to the Story Learning Podcast, regular doses of language learning tips and motivation to help you become fluent in any language. With me, Olly Richards. For language programs, books, free resources, and much more, visit StoryLearning.com. Hey guys, welcome back to the show. Great to have you here. The news from my end is that my microphone has broken. So I'm having to use an old microphone and the quality is not quite so good. It's very annoying when things break, isn't it? Especially when you need them. But I won't bore you with that. I'm going to get on to the content of the show. We've got a great question today from Tomas in Spain, I think. I think he said he's in Spain. Well, anyway, it's from Tomas and his mother tongue is Spanish, but I'm rambling. Now, without any further ado, let's dive into today's question from Tomas.
Hi, Ollie. I'm Tomás from Spain. I've been learning English for 4.5 or maybe 5 years now, and I've always been very focused and motivated with the learning because I love communication. I've recently discovered your amazing podcast, and I'm really hooked on them. They're kind of addictive for me. I usually listen to each one of them many, many times because it's my way to really not only grasp what you're saying, but to really acquire the new knowledge, the new words, the new expressions, and your intonation and fluency as well. It's also a useful way for me to get used to the British accent because most of my audio input is American English. So I still haven't caught up with all your podcasts, so I hope no one has done my question before. But here I go. I have face-to-face conversations once in a while, and I usually feel pretty comfortable speaking English for 20 minutes or half an hour. But at that point, I feel uncomfortable, embarrassed, and I get stuck. It's like my brain has to do a big effort and it gets tired. That doesn't represent a big problem for me on my language exchanges because when it happens, I ask to my maid to change to my mother tongue, and of course, obviously, it's the end of the problem. But I'm going to visit London in September, and I wouldn't want that happens to me there. So, do you know how can I manage that? Thank you very much.
Okay, Tomas, thank you very much for a very, very cool question. You know, this reminds me of a time, must have been about 10 years ago, and I was in the Canary Islands and with my good friends there. And this was right at the beginning when I was first starting to learn Spanish. And I remember that, with my friend who is actually also called Tomas, but he's probably a bit older than you. So we were really good friends, and we were in London. We were living in London at the time, and that's how I learnt Spanish actually in London with this friend of mine. And it was always very, once I got over the basics, it was quite easy for me to speak and practice Spanish with him because I got used to the way he talked, and that's how I got my practice. Now, when we went to the Canary Islands together for the first time, that was a different story because I realized that obviously not everyone speaks like him. And I remember one evening we went out to this beautiful bar somewhere in Tenerife, and we were with him and a friend of mine and about 12 or 15 other childhood friends of his, and they were all kind of speaking, not just speaking Spanish, but speaking like local Spanish, the kind of Spanish that they grew up speaking together, which is tough for anybody, even like after, even for someone who's not from there to understand what they're saying is tough. So there I was, sort of chatting away, drinking rum and either like a mixture of rum and Coke and rum con limon, rum and like lime or like lemonade or whatever it is. And, having loads of fun. And then, so we went out at like 8 or 9 o'clock in the evening, and then an hour went by, and then 2 hours and 3 and 4 and 5. And then we were still there at like 6 o'clock in the morning, drinking and talking. But, there came a point at about 1 or 2 in the morning when my head just wanted to explode. and it kind of came because like I just got so tired from the like I was not only was I having to speak in Spanish, which wasn't such a big deal for me, but I was also having to like understand what all of these guys were saying and really concentrate so that I could follow the conversation. And around that time, like 2 in the morning, it just got too much, and my head started to hurt, and I kept going, but I couldn't really interact in the conversation anymore because I just got so tired. But when I look back on that moment, I think that's one of the moments when my Spanish really stepped up a level and went from good to great because I pushed through this pain barrier that kind of just took me beyond where I was, and I think I could have only have achieved that by actually being in there in that kind of painful moment and having to push through and keep talking anyway. So there is an element of that for you, Thomas, that like you have to when you're learning English or any other language, if the only thing you're doing is kind of having 30-minute or 60-minute conversations, you never push yourself that far. And so to a certain extent, the only way you're really going to take your English up to the next level and become very, very strong is by having a lot of extended practice. The kind of immersion, as they call it, when you can't escape, when you have to keep going. And I think for you, when you say that you get tired after about 30 minutes, that's probably what's going on. You just haven't had enough time and experience speaking English at length to be able to push through. It's like a muscle, and it does get easier. But you do have to put yourself in those situations where you can speak for longer. But also I think it's probably not just the linguistic thing, because your English is really good. Okay, I know a lot of Spanish people, and comparatively speaking, your English is really very good. So I don't think it's just a linguistic thing. What often happens is, when you're having conversations or language exchanges or even lessons and things like that, if it's all based on conversation, then after about 30 minutes, I find that the conversation starts to wear a bit thin, and you have to start to force the conversation, which is not fun for anybody. So that's why, I often like to limit my lessons to 30 minutes or 45 minutes at the most, because I find that that's when you're really in your element, and it's when you're really able to concentrate and focus and kind of manipulate the language and still learn. So what I would recommend you do is if you're not able to put yourself in more like immersion environments with English, then what I would suggest you do is to start using those 30 minutes to push yourself and challenge yourself sooner. All right. So typically, a good thing to do is to have topic-based discussions and to think about to push yourself in using different topics. So you force yourself to use different vocabulary and talk about different subjects. So I don't know how you're running your sessions at the moment, but if the normal thing you do is just to speak and just to have conversations, start to define topics in advance. So tell your teacher, right, today or on Thursday, we're going to talk about politics. And then what you can do then is you can start to prepare for that specific topic, learn vocabulary you need, and then when you have the lesson, you can stick to that topic. Now, if you choose difficult topics, that's a good thing. It means that your brain power is going to be used right from the start when you're fresh. So you're going to probably get tireder sooner, but that's a good thing because it means you're going to push yourself through these kind of boundaries. So that's probably the thing that I would start to look at doing is like find different ways to push yourself in those 30 minutes and change things up, do things a bit different, do things that you're not comfortable with. It's going to be hard, but it's also going to push you beyond your current comfort zone. All right, so I hope that's helpful, Thomas. Thank you very much for your question. If you would like to ask me a question, you can, but what I'm more interested in right now is to get some people to come along and to leave me a little message to celebrate the 100th episode of the podcast. So what I'd like you to do is to simply leave a message with your name and where you're from, and then tell me one thing that you've learnt from this podcast about language learning. Okay? Very, very simple. Your name, where you're from, and one thing that you've learnt from me or from this podcast. That would be super cool. And then for episode 100, I'm going to put them all together so we can listen to all these people from around the world saying things that they've learned about language learning. I thought that'd be really cool. And if you'd like to do that, I'm still looking for some more people to submit, and you can go to iwillteachyoualanguage.com/ask to do that. Cool. Now, at the end of every episode, I like to leave you with a resource of some kind on the topic of the show. Today, I'm going to give you a quote from not Thomas Jefferson. I was reading a book about Jefferson last night. This is from Theodore Roosevelt, so not too far away. And he said, "Nothing in the world is worth having or worth doing unless it means effort, pain, difficulty. I have never in my life envied a human being who led an easy life. I have envied a great many people who led difficult lives and led them well." All right, so I'll leave you to draw your own conclusions about what I mean by that and its relation to Thomas's question about improving his English. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you in the next episode of the podcast.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. And here at Story Learning, everything that I do is powered by stories, whether that's writing books, teaching lessons, crafting courses. My mission is to help everyone succeed at learning a new language through the power of story. And we now have comprehensive language courses in over 15 languages, from Spanish to French, Korean to Japanese, and across all levels from beginner to mastery. And you can take a 7-day free trial of any of these programs by visiting storylearning.com/courses. I've poured my heart and soul into creating these courses over the last 10 or so years, and we've helped tens of thousands of new students achieve their dreams of learning a new language, all through the power of story. So go ahead and take a free trial. There's no commitment. You can try out our method for free, see if this can also be the breakthrough for you that it's been for so many other people. storylearning.com/courses.